Welcome to the What Doesn't Kill Me podcast, a podcast for those with chronic illness, chronic pain, and for those that love and support us. I'm Meg Quinlist, your host. After 45 years of living with debilitating rheumatoid arthritis and having had over 45 surgeries, I have learned a thing or two. Chronic pain can be a lonely existence. It can leave us feeling alienated and disconnected from others. So just know that this is a safe space. We are going to share our wisdom and our woes. We're going to offer support and advice so that we thrive. So I always like to share with everyone what our guests are going to be saying to you today or telling you today. And I like to say that they're insights that you're going to get. And the insights that Jennifer is going to give us there's 6 of them. One is that Crohn's disease is so much different than just a gastrointestinal disease. It affects so many different parts of the individual. Number 2 is the difference between colitis and Crohn's disease. That's something I never understood, and it's very interesting to see what the differences are. Number 3 is the long-term and the costly impact of being diagnosed at the young age of 11 when she was diagnosed. Number 4 is she's going to share the intimate story about the truly scary surgery she had at 19, which changed her life for the better. Number 5, she really talks about how important it is to advocate for yourself, switching doctors if they aren't listening to you, being open-minded about new treatment options, and making sure you are always laughing as much as you can because laughter is the best medicine. 6th insight she's going to share is what to stop saying to people in chronic pain and what's okay to say to somebody in chronic pain. Because people mean well, but they don't always get it across. I met Jennifer when we were both competing in the U.S. national competition for synchronized swimming. Yeah, right. More like we were taking a YMCA class in arthritis aquatics. It's a very scary place. There are very serious people there. And they're not so friendly and they don't always smile. They can be a little cliquey, kind of like high school. But I saw Jennifer and she was happy and came right at me and was very welcoming. Here, we found out we were kindred spirits. We're both artists. So we started hanging out and doing art together. And that's our backstory. That's how I met Jennifer. I describe Jennifer as someone who loves to laugh. She loves to joke and kid around with others, and she laughs really easily. She doesn't take herself too seriously, that's for sure. She's not afraid to have fun. She's creative in so many areas of her life, from her artwork to her baked goods, and even how she does her job. Speaking of her job, she's a really hard worker. She has 2 part-time jobs, which she really enjoys, and she works really hard at them. The hardest part, I think, for her is not working too hard at the expense of her own autoimmune diseases. She's an extrovert and feels energized when she hangs out with people. She's very passionate about animals, equality, her independence, and high-quality baked goods. Her many interests include dance, martial arts, science fiction, and traveling. She's moved around quite a bit growing up, from Delaware to Virginia to Pennsylvania in her early years, and then Luxembourg as a teen. Then she came back to PA. Her happiest times are spending time with her dad and her dear dog, Martin. To me, she is like a hot cup of steaming tea on a cold day, warm, welcome, and energizing. Again, I want to welcome you to the What Doesn't Kill Me podcast, the podcast for people with chronic illness, chronic disability, and chronic pain, and also for those that love and support them. I want us to share our stories. I want to know what your journey has been like, both your wisdom and your woe. First question I want to ask you is, what is your chronic illness?
My primary chronic illness is Crohn's disease. A lot of people know it as a bathroom disease, but honestly, it is a lot more than that. And for some of us, it attacks our entire bodies. Of course, the main symptoms do tend to be gastrointestinal. What it happens is the body attacks itself. So it is an autoimmune disease in the digestive tract. The body attacks the digestive tract and creates ulcerations. There's a whole host of gastrointestinal symptoms that happen. A lot of patients experience bloody bleeding, diarrhea, cramping. So it's not a lot of fun. I personally have a more severe form of Crohn's. I've had 13 major surgeries. First one when I was 19 years old to remove my entire large intestine. I have a permanent ileostomy. I no longer have any large intestine. I do not have a rectum. I do not have an anus. I could not change this back if I wanted to, which I don't. I had a lot of difficulty that caused me to choose this, and it has actually improved my quality of life quite a lot. Most people don't think of the words ostomy and improving quality of life, but for me and people like me, it absolutely does. Some of the secondary symptoms can be joint pain and inflammation. Now, I also happen to have a secondary autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis. A lot of people with one autoimmune start to collect more, which is kind of unfair if you ask me. So basically, they took out my entire large intestine, the lower intestine, including the appendix. They left just a couple inches of my rectum. And what they did, it's called a J pouch surgery, where they take the small intestine and they cause it to loop around on itself a little bit to cause a continent pouch.
Mhm.
And then they connect that to the rectum. When I was 11, I had my first diagnosis was actually ulcerative colitis. Back at that time, they didn't have solid ways of differentiating between the two diseases as they do now.
I find that confusing, colitis versus Crohn's disease, and I don't know what the differences are. If you could give us a little bit on that.
They're similar diseases. I want to say, from my understanding, the main difference is in ulcerative colitis, it attacks mainly just your large intestine and the lining of your large intestine. As far as severity, it can be absolutely as painful and as severe as Crohn's disease. And it can cause you to be incredibly ill. But the procedure I had when I was 19 would have cured me had that been the case. And over the years found out that I must not have had ulcerative colitis. And when they biopsied, they found, yeah, you definitely have Crohn's. This is something that we couldn't tell back then because we just didn't have that kind of medical technology. It has more to do with biopsies, as well as some of the continued symptoms that I'd had later on, such as fistulas, which start in Crohn's disease. They start in the intestine as part of the wounds from an ulceration or something. And then they can go and lead a wound track to anywhere on the outside of the body. For me, they've all happened to be near where the anus was. They were not that long. I could leak stool through them. It was not a wonderful situation.
That had to be so difficult. You were so young, and to leak stool at that age.
I mean, I think I took it better than I could have. After a number of surgeries going up from the bottom, I was experiencing a level of incontinence as well, stool incontinence. So I was actually wearing adult diapers all the time for the last few years until I decided to go ahead and have my permanent ileostomy. Just absolutely changed my life.
So explain what an ileostomy is.
So basically, what my surgeon did was he took a piece of healthy small intestine, made a little hole in the outside of my stomach, and my intestine comes through it. I wear a bag that sticks on like a giant Band-Aid, basically, and I poop into that. It's not glamorous. A lot of people fear them, and one of the messages I do like to get out there is they're not to be feared. They can change your life for the better.
They're not to be feared because they give you your life back as far as being able to do things, get out and attend events and not worry about soiling yourself.
I think one of the biggest impacts in my life is before ileostomy surgery, I would wake up every half an hour during the night and have to go to the bathroom. At most, I would get half an hour of sleep in between.
When you say go to the bathroom, it's that you have to poop.
Yes, and many of those times I will have leaked in between. I would wake up suddenly with horrible cramping. And if I didn't get to the bathroom, it would just come out on its own. The day I had my surgery, that never happened again.
Which has got to be freeing. Jesus, I can't even imagine that.
Yes, I wear regular underwear now. Yes, I don't have to worry about where every bathroom is and everywhere I go. I don't have to worry about what if it's occupied. But I think the biggest impact on my life was being able to sleep.
With that whole plumbing area. Like, I can't even, that must have been hell.
It was not easy.
So do you feel like that in some way is under control, so to speak, and you're doing well with that?
So as far as the intestinal symptoms of the Crohn's, I am currently in what is known as a surgical remission. which basically means that because of all my surgeries, I don't experience a lot of intestinal symptoms anymore. But occasionally I do have to be careful though of what I eat. There are a few things that I've learned I can't eat because I do have to be more aware that I can get intestinal blockages with a shorter system like this. We don't really know exactly why that's true. We just know it is. And I have found that for me, it happens to be the leafy greens that I absolutely cannot tolerate. Unfortunately, it's also some of the more higher protein vegetarian items. I can't really extract the nutrients from like beans. I can't get anything from like leafy greens. Those I can't even eat at all. Spanakopita sent me to the hospital. I had been a hardcore vegetarian for many years. After my last surgery, I was still a vegetarian. And then I had gotten the flu. And then I had this odd craving for a chicken cheesesteak at one point. So I was like, you know what? Just listen to your body. Felt a lot better. Not
Oh,
for the flu specifically, but like physically started to feel stronger after that. I was like, you know what? I think my body's telling me something. So, I'm not going to sit down and eat a steak now, but I do incorporate some chicken. I eat a lot of fish, but I try not to think about where it came from.
so there's some restrictions that you still have. You do get some times when you can have pain and you can have some intestinal upset. A lot of that based around what you're eating, so you have to be very careful. But I guess, do you actually know at this point,
Oh,
or
yeah, it's been years for me, so I know what my triggers are. Another thing I have to be careful of is hydration
oh,
because I don't have a large intestine, and we think about what the large intestine's function is. And in digestion, it mainly absorbs all the water back out of your stool. It also absorbs more nutrients and certain things like that, but main function is to absorb the moisture out. I still have to be very careful. For instance, just one day I had done all my regular day things. I had drank normally, and then suddenly at night I wasn't feeling well. I vomited. The next morning, my dad had to take me to the hospital, and my kidneys were already having a problem.
is it because you drank too much fluid?
No, once I had vomited, we think that maybe I had come down with a little viral bug or something. The vomiting came, then just my bag filled with fluid. Every time I tried to drink something, it would come back up. 12 hours later, I had to go to the hospital for dehydration. Obviously, that can escalate fast.
Yeah.
So it's something that you always have to be aware of, keep on top of it.
So in essence, you have to drink a lot more than the average person would have to drink.
Yes. But you also have to be careful not to just keep drinking water, 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 because that will deplete your body of electrolytes. My electrolytes are pretty stable at this point. I can kind of go by how I feel.
Yeah, it sounds like eating, drinking, maintaining that aspect of your body is a second job. Like it just is pretty intense.
But, eventually it just becomes second nature. You've done it long enough and
You have a routine, you stick with it, and you know if you deviate, you're going to pay for it.
right.
Yes, gotcha. I want to ask you about your identity and your sense of yourself, how that has changed over the years as you've lived with this chronic illness.
I think there's a couple thoughts that come to mind. I think I am actually lucky in one way. I was diagnosed as a child. People who are diagnosed older, they have a before life that they mourn. And as they're going through the diagnosis process and all the treatments, they're like, oh, look at all this stuff that I used to be able to do. And then came Crohn's. I don't have that. I don't experience that. How many of us remember so much of our childhood that well that, you can differentiate before 11 and after 11 and how you would live your life? I don't have that, at least. So I think that is very helpful. I don't have a before life to mourn at all. As far as my identity, well, I just turned 40 and I kind of took a moment to step back and evaluate, where I am. And as usual, I was pretty unfair to myself. I'm like, I'm 40, I look around, one of my coworkers that I'm pretty friendly with, she's going to be 29 next week. She's got 2 kids, a husband. She's got life, kind of figured out for as much as somebody can. And I kind of mourn that, the life that I couldn't have. I probably don't need to be single, but for me, I've always been so preoccupied by my health and everything. I've never gotten into dating. Obviously, I don't have any children. And actually, there's a good possibility that my ability to birth my own children was taken away from me by surgery at 19. But you know what? I am happy to live here with my dog. He makes me happy. I do have two part-time jobs that make me very happy. But when I think about it, yeah, would I like to have the normal, I don't know what normal is,
Right.
but
The
your
so-called
average
normal.
your
Yeah.
average path of, finding someone, getting married, having kids, living in a nice house with my family. And yes, I would probably have loved that. But that just wasn't in my cards. But yeah, I am happy with what I have.
Jen, you've touched on a couple good things. First of all, is when you talk about because you were diagnosed so young and this happened so young, arthritis happened to me at 13. So I'm in a similar situation. I think that when you're diagnosed when you're young, it just becomes a part of your life because you don't know any different to some extent. And also, you don't have an expectation of health the way some people in their 40s and 50s do. They get really pissed off. I'm in my 40s and I'm sick. I shouldn't be sick in my 40s. My rheumatologist even said the hardest patients he treats are the ones that the middle of their life, they're struck down with some kind of illness because they're really, this isn't fair. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. And he said, people that were diagnosed when they're younger just have a whole different attitude. It just, they have to make some kind of life out of it because otherwise, what are they going to do? I mean, we don't know anything different. Like you said, you've made your peace and you've accepted it and you're happy now. Sometimes just surviving is an accomplishment. So people with chronic illness or chronic pain have a lot of shame associated with it because we don't feel like we're doing everything we can to make ourselves healthy. I always feel like I could be doing more. I end up having a flare up because I didn't ask for help. I let people down in my life when I go on vacation because I'm the person that always has to make a stop and rest. And I feel like not that anybody says anything, and it's all my own shit that I'm dealing with and internalizing. Do you find any shame associated with your chronic illness?
Well, I know that I tend to hide when I'm doing poorly. I don't want others to worry, specifically my dad, because
Yeah.
he's everything for me. He's always been there. He's always the one to help me with everything health related. And if I'm going through a period where I'm in a lot of pain from the arthritis or my back problems that I've got, I don't really say it. But then he'll want to get together or something, and I have to be like, oh, I'm not feeling well. Then I feel bad because it sounds like I'm just trying to back out.
Yeah.
He has no idea that I'm going through all this.
So you're protecting him a little bit, like you're protecting,
I'm
you don't want
trying,
him to worry.
but in the end, it never works out well
Yeah.
for me.
And why do you say that? Because he always figures it out?
When he does know that things are not good, he tends to worry more than if I probably were just honest with him. I feel guilty, I guess, when I try to protect him and then it backfires.
I will say having children, you can't hide anything from them. That's been my challenge my whole life is trying to not make them be the mother or the caretaker of their mom. I don't know how good I've been at that. And I struggle with that because when they see me upset and in pain, they can't help but feel upset and feel lost and confused. And they want to take the pain away. And there's not much they can do. So I understand what you mean by with your dad trying to protect him. It's really difficult. There are so many things that people that love us that want to comfort us and want to help us but don't know how to have a conversation with us and even what to ask. Is there any advice you can give for people like your father, things that they can ask you that are okay to ask you, that you welcome?
I think I speak for a lot of people when I hear the the open-ended question, hey, how are you doing today? I usually say like, good, 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 whether
Absolutely.
that's the or not.
Right.
I think that it's important not to assume that the person is having a good day when you're talking to them. And likewise, it's important not to assume they're having a bad day.
So do you suggest somebody say, hey, is this a good day or a bad day?
Yeah, that would be great. I once knew a man who was a customer of mine. I saw him about once a week, and he unfortunately had Huntington's disease. And he said to us once, we would ask him all the time, hey, how are you doing today? And he said, you know, at the doctor's office, they never ask me that. What they say when you walk in the door is, it's so nice to see you today,
Like
because
that.
you never know when they're not going to see me. And that really, I think, changed my perspective. how to approach somebody who has a chronic illness or even something, which unfortunately would be like Huntington's disease, degenerative.
That's awesome. I love that because that is true. It's so nice to see you today. Because I do find that when people say, "Hi, how are you?" I'm not going to tell them, "Well, my elbow's killing me. I can't use my shoulder. I'm having a hard time with my nerves." And nobody really wants to hear that. The good,
No,
the bad, and the ugly.
they don't want to hear that my stool's been loose today and I'm shitting up the stool.
Yes. Let's face it, people cannot handle that. That's really good advice. Can you share some of the frustrating things that people have said to you when they're trying to comfort you that really they just need to stop saying?
I have a few. It always happens for a reason.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Well, it don't always happen for a reason. Trust me.
No.
Another one that I don't like is it could always be worse. Because we know that it can always be worse.
Yeah.
But right now, what I'm dealing with is hard for me. And life's not a competition. Even though some people view it as one, we always know it can be worse. But right now, I'm not talking about the person who has it worse. Everybody has our own struggles, and it doesn't matter whose struggles worse. We are all allowed to feel our own struggles in the way we do. Our feelings are always valid. A lot of people tend to think, at least I'm not dying from this, but that doesn't help me right now.
No, doesn't help you today in this moment at all. At all. It just makes them feel better. The other thing I just have to share too, and it's that God only gives you what you can handle.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, because there would be no suicide if God only gave us what we can handle. I truly believe that. And that's equally frustrating and so annoying. So I just wish people would take those things right out of their vocabulary and out of anything they're going to say.
Well, and yours actually brought up something else that I always think of. It rubs me the wrong way. I do understand that there's a lot of people that do look to religion to help themselves through tough times. And I'm not trying to undercut that. But when people get through those tough times, whether it be with a health issue, whether it be any other issue they have in their life, they always say, it was God that did it. It was Jesus that did it. No, you did it, my friend, but you did it. Don't cut yourself short here. You might have leaned on God. You might have leaned on Jesus. You might have leaned on whoever the heck you might have leaned on, but you did that work.
You did.
Like,
Yeah.
don't count yourself out. That was you.
Yeah. Don't sell yourself short there. And also don't assume that everybody else is on the same religious path that you are.
Right.
I don't necessarily want to hear that God did it because I could use a win. I could use feeling like, yeah, I do believe that God helps you, puts people in your path maybe to help you, but it's free will and it's shit that happens left and right. I mean, I used to pray for God to take my chronic illness away. Years and years I prayed for it and I got so pissed off at God and I realized, Meg, what are you praying for that? It's not going to happen. So just get over it and don't be mad at God. Just deal with it, so that you can get caught up in the religious aspect of all this. And I think it's great if it helps you, but if it hurts you more than it helps you, that's something you have to re-examine. I describe chronic pain or chronic illness as shrinking your world as a thief, kind of steals your abilities. What interests or hobbies have you had to give up because of a direct connection from either your arthritis or your Crohn's?
Well, I think some of it might even go back to when I was a teenager. I was put on a lot of very, very heavy and extensive medications, as early as 11, 12 years old to try to keep myself healthy. A lot of high doses of prednisone, 6-MP, mercaptopurine, which can be toxic. I was on 5 ASA medications. Eventually, I went on taking biologic medications, which were somewhat new technology at the time. But one thing it did to me that I firmly believe is it changed my cognition. When I was a kid, I was in the accelerated classes at school. By the time I got to college, I dropped out because I couldn't handle the academics anymore.
Wow.
And I firmly believe that these medications didn't affect my thinking and my ability to think. Obviously, at the time, it was more important to conquer the disease. Maybe we didn't know that this was going to happen. My dad tells me that my IQ was tested off the charts when I was a kid. And now I can't. And I think a lot of it would be medication.
Nobody tests those medications all together combined with a woman your age, a young girl at your stage of life, your weight, your biologic makeup. So I do think this is all a crapshoot in a lot of ways. And there are definitely going to be side effects.
It's a similar, they're finding a lot of children who survived horrible childhood cancers as adults now are having other problems caused by the treatments themselves.
Wow.
They're finding that many childhood cancer survivors that live through some of the hardest things to live through in their life now have all sorts of heart problems, like cardiovascular system issues because of some of the treatments that they went through. And if you had told the parents, back then, well, we can, treat your kid, but they'll end up with heart problems as an adult, would the parents have said no?
Exactly.
I don't think any would have.
No.
If any at all. I think the parents would have said, let's solve the cancer issue, let my kid live, and we'll deal with the rest later.
I agree. With medications, and this is another thing that goes into the ridiculousness of what people can say is, well, I'm just not a medicine person. And I just want to say, well, God, aren't you lucky that you had that option to decide you weren't going to be a medicine person? You didn't have that ability to decide. You may not have survived long enough, or you may have had so many other complications to be worse than the medications. I mean, that's a lot of it, is that people think that there's a luxury and that we choose to be a medicine person. No, I just want to get out of bed in the morning. I just want to function. Yeah.
I have arthritis in part of my back. I also currently have a disc issue. Because I've had so many abdominal surgeries, my core muscles have a lot of problems, and my back takes over a lot of the function, a lot of pain, and for my hips as well. And it has been progressive. When I was 17, I decided I wanted to start dancing, and I thought that would be awesome. I fell in love with tap dancing. I did ballet and jazz as well. It was great. But when I was in my early 30s, my arthritis started making it really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And eventually I decided I couldn't do it anymore. When I was 35, I was inspired to try Taekwondo at a school that had classes for adults and family classes and stuff. And I was loving it. I earned my red belt, got all the way there. And then my back problems escalated quite a lot. And since then, I haven't been to the school in well over a year at this point.
God.
I really want to go back. I would love to earn my belt and beyond. And I'm currently, talking with doctors about, things to do for my back. I see a chiropractor every week or two, depending on how I'm doing. He's my favorite person right now.
Oh, good.
I've recently started on a medication that helps control nerve pain, Gabapentin. I'm hoping that helps with the sciatica, which I think is caused by nerve compression in the back, as well as I have a problem in my left leg in the thigh muscle that we think is being caused by a nerve problem with the disc. Unfortunately, I have a compounding problem, which is I can't take anti-inflammatory medication or use it topically because of the Crohn's disease.
Oh, wow.
If you take medications like that, it can exacerbate Crohn's disease.
I'll tell you, Jen, I have graduated to nerve pain, and that is the worst pain that I've ever felt in my entire life.
Yeah.
It never stops. It never stops at all, to the point where I finally had to have the neurostimulator implanted in my back. And that has given me my life back. And I happen to be somebody who has had a lot of luck with that. But before, I was on gabapentin and oxycarbine and all different kinds of drugs for the nerve pain.
Probably in the next 20 years, I might have one too.
Keep that in mind. There's hope, and that's the main thing. I know exactly what you're saying about you find something you love, you're doing it well, and you're getting so much joy out of it, and then suddenly you have to stop. And that's the thief part of this whole thing, where it comes in, it takes something you love and takes it away from you. And that's so difficult.
Yeah. I currently work about 12, 13 hours a week at Starbucks in about 4-hour intervals. And fortunately, they let me bring a chair over when I need to the drive-through so I can do my job. But I've been coming home more and more often in more and more pain just from that. And I don't like admitting it, but I can see a future where I can't even do that.
Yeah.
And that makes me sad.
Yeah. Because I'm sure you're very good at what you do and you enjoy it.
I do. I love it. Most people hate working the drive-through at Starbucks. That's, I love it. Like, where else do you get to see dogs? Come on.
Right. That is tough. And I know that's the thing that you cling to, is that you get out of the house. you get outside of your own head. And I know when I'm home alone inside my own head, that is not a good place to be. I need to be interacting with people. I need to be talking to people because it's not nice in there sometimes in this head of mine. That's a really scary thing, is that you could lose the ability to work. And that must be very scary. What role does mental health play in your experience with chronic pain?
Oh, it's been a big thing for me. I've had a therapist since I was probably 12. Um, a psychiatrist as well. I've seen a few different ones because for a long time I was trying to find one that actually listened to what I was saying, and I finally have. I've been with her for years.
Good.
I think it's important to have somebody that really listens to you. I had one psychiatrist that would make me fill out a little checklist and then he would prescribe medication. And I was on all sorts of medications. And
Yeah.
I just realized that was not the way I wanted to do things. I've gone down in some pretty serious depression. So over the years, I've needed to be inpatient a few times. And for me, it's important that I can sometimes recognize the symptoms on my own that I can see, but a lot of times I need to trust other people.
Yeah.
Because other people tend to know when I'm going to go down almost better than I do at this point. But definitely having a mental health care team. But I think it's important to have a relationship with a team that you can trust them and they'll trust you. One thing that, as an example, about 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to using medical marijuana for pain control. Initially, my mental health team was not exactly on the same page. They knew my struggles, so they weren't ready to say no. But they weren't 100% on board with this. I showed them basically, I did my research and I presented them with my information, my research, cannabinoids, terpenes. I found the combination that what would help me. And over the years, I have made them believers that it's not necessarily a bad thing. The program is there, and if people use it responsibly, it can be a really good thing.
I mean, just do you have any moments of humor or when you've had to laugh at the craziness that is your life?
If I didn't laugh, I would be dead.
Yeah.
I have to laugh. Like,
Too.
There's so many things that I guess were not funny at the time, but looking back, I absolutely laugh. And, there's a lot of things that weren't funny at all. But after my first surgery, I had a temporary ileostomy. I was too scared to look at the thing. There was one time the nurses had emptied it for me because I still wasn't ready to look at it yet. And, then I went to stand up and the whole bag just went all over the floor.
Oh, God.
That's my first problem. But in hindsight, that was hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. But at the time, it really wasn't funny. But I'm also one of those people that's prone to small accidents. If there's something I can drop, I will. If I can break it, it'll probably break when I have it.
Jen, I am too. I am the picture of when shit happens, it happens big to me.
Like I said, if I couldn't laugh at this stuff, then I think I'd be dead.
I know. I have to say, I think that has saved me most through the 45 years of dealing with this. That has been the thing that has really kept me sane and has kept me having an upbeat attitude and optimistic. And it's either you're going to laugh or you're going to cry. So it sounds like you choose to laugh.
I do.
Yeah, I think
it's always better when everybody's laughing with you, not at you, right?
Yes, yeah. Now, are there any support groups or social circles that you have who have been helpful for you or have helped you get through tough times? Or
when I was very first diagnosed as a kid, Crohn's and Colitis Foundation every year does an information seminar at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And it happened to be within a few weeks of my diagnosis that first time. And my dad went to it that year. And I am sure that helped him.
Wow.
I'm sure having that right that's available to him, where he could learn more about it from doctors at CHOP. I'm sure that helped put him at ease, with his kid in the hospital.
Yeah. It's such a different world too for a parent dealing with a child with a chronic illness and watching them suffer, watching them go through this and feel so helpless and not knowing what to do than it even is for the child who's going through this. You don't know any better. You don't know until you become a parent, a pain you can't even imagine, that you are helpless. So that must have been really good. It's good that CHOP did that.
As far as I know, they still host that every year.
Anything that you want to really get across, people that are dealing with the medical community, not feeling heard, feeling alone, is there anything you want to tell them or advice you want to give them?
Keep advocating for yourself. If you feel like you are so unwell that it takes too much from you to do it, see if you can get somebody else to help you, a good friend, a parent. I'm sure that there are even people out there who do this for a living.
Advocates. Yep.
People. Get somebody to make sure that your needs are being communicated for you if you're not feeling well enough to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
Also, whenever I had an appointment that was talking about something big, like possible surgery, I always brought somebody with me, because as soon as I hear that word, I start zoning out. And, you got to hear everything that goes with it.
Yep.
Sometimes you realize you're with the wrong doctor. Sometimes you realize that you are doing everything you can and this doctor is still just not processing it for whatever reason it is. Change doctors. There's more doctors out there. I know some of us are worried about it looking like we're shopping for doctors to get diagnoses, because sometimes that's sort of what it feels like. But there will be somebody out there that will listen to you, that will perform a test that you need that you didn't know about. You just need to find somebody. It's possible.
Yes.
And just give up.
Yeah.
And a lot of the interventions they'll mention are going to sound scary. They really are. But sometimes scary can be good in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what a couple of things that you said there. First of all, is bringing somebody with you to hear, because you do draw a blank and you can't hear it. I actually also take my phone out and record the conversation.
Good idea.
One question that I always throw out to the doctor, and this always kind of throws them, I always say, okay, I'm sitting here and I've asked you a list of questions. What haven't I asked you? If it was your mom sitting here or your daughter sitting here, what would you tell her to ask? And you'll be surprised how many questions they'll give you. Well, you might want to know about this. And it's like, my God, I can't believe he didn't tell me that. But it's because he's looking at you as a patient, not as a person. So it's really important. And I also love how you said, find a new doctor. I've left some offices crying because they've yelled at me for one or another thing. And I just have been devastated. It's a real humbling experience to be a patient. You learn finally that I have to advocate for myself, that I am worthy of their time and I deserve their time. One last question that I have, Jen, is the name of the podcast is What Doesn't Kill Me. And the reason I called it that is because I know the statement is what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. But I'd like you to finish that statement with something that is meaningful to you and something you believe in right now in your life.
What doesn't kill me, I think what doesn't kill me gives me an opportunity for growth. I hate that, but it
does.
Even when it comes to like some bad jobs I've had, I think my last job was pretty awful. When I quit that job, when I took that step, I think I grew up. I think I went from being someone who just did things because they were supposed to someone who finally realized they could take control.
Yeah, I do think that. I think that pain is the biggest educator. Not that you would wish it on anybody, but I've learned more about myself in the darkest times than I ever would when things are going great. So I like that very much, that, it does give the opportunity for growth. And things are smooth sailing. You don't tend to really learn a whole heck of a lot, So I like that.
I think I've grown more because after that job, I started thinking about what do I need? What's going to help me be able to handle myself, rather than going with I need a job and I need to work as much as possible because that's how the grind is. I think I finally woke up.
That's awesome. I love that. I really appreciate this. Really, Jen.
Thank you.
You take care. Thank you, Jen. Some of the key points that you talked about that I just want to reiterate is about the life-saving surgery you had at 19 that completely changed your world. It gave you your dignity and it gave you your hope back. It changed your entire world. The ileostomy, even though it was very scary, you kept an open mind and you went for it. And that's amazing. what a difference it has made in your life. I love the topics about what to stop saying to people that are in chronic pain, what doesn't help them, and just please take those out of your vocabulary. I love the phrase, "It's so nice to see you," instead of asking, "How are you doing today?" That rote question that we all get asked. A couple things she also mentioned was listening to your body, being an advocate for yourself, finding a new doctor if he's not helping you or he's not listening. That's so important. Also, keep that open mind. Be open to ideas, even though they might scare you somewhat. She shared all this information with us, and I feel as though if she can share something so intimate and personal, it behooves us to try to understand the nature of someone's disease. And if they're comfortable with it, it helps our comfort level. Well, thanks again for listening to the podcast. I hope you learned something.
Several times I made excuses for myself.